Hey guys, and welcome to my channel. Okay, so I'm back with another Sketchy Tuesday. First of all, I'm so sorry that there was not a video on Friday. I did have it filmed, but things just got a little bit out of control. I've been super sick recently, and yeah, but that video is gonna go up this Friday, so keep an eye out for it. I am super excited about it. I'm gonna be talking about all these different kinds of watercolor paper and directly comparing and contrasting them in a battle of the watercolor papers. So make sure you keep an eye out for that. But in today's video, today's Sketchy Tuesday, I am going to be talking about the process of how I use reference and some tips and kind of detailed techniques. I'm going to walk you through my whole process. So hopefully this will give you guys some help or techniques or ideas about how to use reference. So the first thing that I'm going to talk about is how I create reference. So the piece that I'm working on my sketchbook is inspired by peaches. I took all my own reference and I used the peach tree that's in my back garden, which is producing peaches right now, to create the reference. I'm going to put that on the screen so that you can see what I created. And I'm going to walk you through how I create my references and my mock-ups. So the first thing that is really important is to take a lot of photos and a lot of reference photos. And I think that really helps with being inspired to create things. So one thing that I have started to do is I actually have an art reference photo album on my phone. And whenever I'm walking and I see something that is beautiful or inspiring or that I could potentially see myself incorporating in an art piece, I take a photo of it and add it to that reference folder. So I have a bunch of stuff in there. I have photos of the sky and clouds, sunsets. I have plant references. I have some animal references. I have some like kind of selfies and some pictures of my friends like standing and various other poses. So I have anatomy references. There's just a bunch of stuff in there, and it's always great to go through and be inspired by some of the photos as well. So I definitely recommend going and taking a lot of photos and starting to build a library of your own art references that you can pull from, and you don't have to worry about copyright or anything like that because they're yours and you've taken them. Most people have a camera phone nowadays and a smartphone, so it is more accessible than ever to take your own references. I also have enlisted the help of some of my friends and my boyfriend to take photos of me if I have an idea. So for this one, I wanted to be kind of have the image pulling the peach off the tree or like holding the peach, and that was something that was a little harder to do by myself, so I have my boyfriend take the photos for me. So don't forget to take advantage of your friends or the self-timer feature. I also will a lot of times like look through selfies, or I'll look through Instagram for my friends' photos, and you can message them and say, hey, can I use this as a reference, or can I draw from this? So once I have my references and my idea that I'm going to work on, I use iDrop or I use AirDrop. That's what it's called. I use AirDrop or iCloud to transfer it to my iPad. You guys can use Dropbox, whatever. And then I actually will use Procreate to cut out the reference images. I'll add other photos, collage everything together. I'll create line work or the base sketch. I'll adjust colors and basically create the mock-up for the piece. I'll also try to work in the same aspect ratio as the final piece will be, and that makes it a lot easier for me to transfer over my idea and my sketch later. So once I get around to actually using the reference, I use the reference in a few different ways, and it really depends on the overall style of the piece. But most of my pieces are somewhat stylized, and so I do have a similar kind of process that I follow for most of those. So the first thing I have to do is to transfer the basic elements to my piece so that the composition and aspect ratio remains the same, and to help establish the proportions and overall structure of the piece. So this isn't like copying all the little details. This is basically establishing the big shapes. And you saw me do that at the beginning of this video where I had the grid. And I use this in two different ways. So I'll either use a grid if I'm working in my sketchbook and if I feel like that is easier, or I will use tracing. And the way that I will use tracing is I will create the mock-up on my iPad, as I said. A lot of times I'll actually do all of my reference and sketching work on my iPad. Sometimes I'll do it on the paper, sometimes I'll do it all on my iPad, and then I'll actually use my iPad as a light box to fully transfer everything over. Or if I want to do that on paper, I will use my iPad and I will transfer like the big shapes. So I'll draw a circle for the head and indicate where the eyes and the nose and the lips are, but not trace every single thing, especially if I'm wanting to stylize. What I'm looking for is to transfer the overall proportions of the piece and the overall structure of the piece so that then I can build off of that. And I'll do the same thing when I'm using the grid. So when I am working off that, like once I have the basic structure, in order to use my actual photo reference, I'll have it open on my iPad. One of the things I'll do is when I'm observing it, I'll use a quick flicking of the eyes up to the reference and then straight down to your artwork, and you want to go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. That allows you to quickly see where your work is kind of the wrong proportions or looking a little bit strange. And then you can use that grid reference that you have to kind of figure out maybe where the issues are. I don't tend to fully use the grid and have everything be perfect and exactly the same, because I am looking for a stylized work. So for me, it's more of a way of establishing proportions and making sure that everything is consistent, as well as saving myself time from constantly erasing. But even that, you can see that there are times that I'm going to struggle with getting things right. You saw I had to erase the hand like 800 times at the beginning of this. So reference it's not going to make everything easy, but it really does help. One of the reasons I've been using a lot more reference is because I'm really trying to improve my anatomy in my artwork and just improve the quality of my artwork overall. And I find that my work is significantly better when I use reference. I think there can be a huge stigma behind using reference, using grids, or using tracing. People can call it things like cheating or whatever. But at the end of the day, it's more important, like you should use the tools that are available to you. And I know that there is kind of talk about like, does using a grid or even like the basic tracing, is something like that going to hinder your artistic process or your artistic progress rather? And I think there is some validity to that idea if you're just using the grid to copy like every line perfectly and you're just doing one square, one square, one square, one square. But I think if you're using the grid or tracing to establish the basic elements, to establish the overall proportions, and then you're going from there, I don't think that necessarily hinders your artistic progress. I think that that is more using a tool to speed up the process. So And even then, it's kind of like it's entirely your own artwork. And as long as you've created the references yourself, especially if you've created the references yourself, there's really not a problem at all, in my opinion, because even the references, the photo references, the mock-up, that's all your own creation. So you're just working off your own creation. Like, it's fine. So when you're drawing like really realistically, that is the time that I will rely more heavily on the grid and making sure that things are really kind of in line with where the grid is. And I think that's one of the times that it can also be most beneficial. So that is kind of my tips and techniques for using reference in my work, and things that I have found have really improved my process, made my process a lot faster, and I think overall has improved my art, because by creating this basic structure and then using observation to then fill in the details, I'm learning a little bit more about how the human body breaks down into shapes and making sure that those shapes that I'm breaking it down into are correct. And then I can build off of that. And that helps me learn the anatomy a little bit more from a structural perspective than getting lost in the details, just drawing straight from reference. So yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on it. Also, this is something I'm excited to talk about. So I'm using these pastel pencils, and this was a birthday present from my sister, and this is the first time that I'm using them. And oh my gosh, so much fun. I did this technique for the first time in a video that I filmed with my sister, actually at her suggestion, because she loves using pastel pencils. And I basically used the pastel pencils over watercolor and smudged them, and I thought the look was so beautiful. I fell in love with it. You can create really soft blurred shading and effects. So with this sketchbook piece, with this Sketchy Tuesday, I really wanted to create a base layer of watercolor and then add in a lot more dimension and depth and like interest with the pastel pencils, and that's what I got to do, and it was really exciting, and I had so much fun, and I can't wait to play with this technique more and with these pastel pencils more, because I really have been excited about this technique. So if anyone has any tips on integrating pastel pencils and watercolor, please let me know down below. I did play around a little bit with adding water to some pastel pencils after I had laid them down, and that worked quite well. So I really enjoyed that technique as well, but I would really love to hear any tips that you guys have. I'm also really interested to hear how you use reference in your artwork. Do you use reference at all? Do you use reference in a more traditional way where you're just observing it? Do you use reference with grids or with tracing or with any other techniques? I had a friend in art school that would use a projector to transfer her images before she painted them, because honestly, like, I relate to this a lot as a painter. My strength is in painting, not in drawing. So for me, getting the structure right is important because it allows my painting skills to shine, and that's kind of where I would like to focus on. So yeah, let me know how you use reference down below. Let me know what you think about the ideas of tracing, using grids, using projectors, those kind of things to speed up your process. I would love to hear what your opinions are on this topic. I really hope that you guys enjoyed this Sketchy Tuesday video. I had a lot of fun working on this peachy piece, and I really like it. I hope that you guys do too. Don't forget to tune in next Friday because it is going to be the battle of the watercolor papers, and I'm super, super psyched about it. Yeah, if you like this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you'd like to see more of my videos. I upload every Tuesday and Friday, or at least I try to. Thanks so much for watching, and as always, have a great rest of your day. Bye, guys!